The NBA Finals are here as we tip off episode 4 of the 2 Cent Sports Podcast. I'm Joey O'Donohue. Alongside me is AJ Fernrohr, Luke Cervello, and Garrett Lynch. Let's jump into the Timberwolves season ending tragically and recap them a little bit, boys. Do you guys have confidence in their future, in that roster, and their ability to win a championship another year? Let's start with my guy AJ.
Thank you, Joey. I feel like the season, you could say if you're a Timberwolves fan, you exceeded expectations, and also it was kind of a letdown at the same time. I feel like once you hit your strides in the playoffs, you really felt like, wow, this could be our year, like coming out of nowhere, and then of course they hit the wall. That is Dallas Mavericks, but I feel like it's too quick to judge them, honestly. I think they got a really young core. Anthony Edwards is 22. Jaden McDaniels is only 23 years old. I did not know that until I actually looked that up. Naz Reid is only 24. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is 25. And Karl Anthony Towns, he's only 28 years old. So, that's your core right there. You only have two guys, Gobert, who's 31, and Conley, who are 36, that are kind of on their way out or are ready to decline. But they're under contract for 2 more years. So, yeah, you can say this season maybe they didn't get where they wanted to go, but I think it's too early to say, like, oh, they didn't make the NBA Finals, they need to make some changes instantly. I don't think that's the case at all. I think you have 2 more years with this crew to kind of figure it out before you really have to decide, all right, should we blow up? Should we move on from Cat? Should we do something? But I think, this is the first conference finals they made in, 20 years? I think you got to let it ride.
Yeah, I think they're definitely. I think it would be jumping to conclusions to say they could never win a championship, but I think a couple of things have to change for them. Number one, I said this to you guys off the air earlier. Karl Anthony Towns needs to stop acting like he's a rookie. His lack of just making the right play, a lack of ability to just make the smart play on both ends of the floor for a guy who it's either his 8th or 9th year in the league. I'm not sure off the top of my head. That has to change. He's running around out there with all this talent, yet no brain. That's step number one for me, because he's going to be a part of a championship winning team for them. His IQ needs to get better. I don't know how you do that, but it does. I think they also need to. I've almost beat this point to it. It's been like beating a dead horse for me with this point throughout this pod, but I think that with their attitude and their kind of getting too high and too low is something they need to work on too next year in the playoffs, because they're going to be back in the thick of things. You need to understand you haven't won anything until you've won it. And saying all this stuff after a second round win isn't going to help you. But I think with the talent on the court and their core in place, they could absolutely win a championship in the next 3 years in the NBA. I don't know how you could sit there and say they have no chance to win a championship in the next 2 or 3 years. I don't know how you could even argue that.
Yeah, good points there, fellas, too. I agree. I think definitely when you look at this Timberwolves team and just the pieces that they have, I think obviously, like you said, AJ, it definitely was a bit of a letdown for them, but it was still, they made the longest run that they have in a while for their franchise history. But I think when you're just looking into going into next season and kind of what things you need to change, it's I think it really comes down to, a little more consistent productions. Luke, you touched on Cat's lack of IQ. I think that really goes a long way, and how this team can really gel together to get themselves, forward and propel them to the next step, which is obviously making a finals. And I think, just all around, the role player production too. I feel like this team, they play with a lot of swagger, a lot of confidence, but I think what ultimately let them, falling short, I think, was just kind of a lack of playing together as a unit and kind of buying in to, one common goal. And I think if they can kind of do that with the pieces they already have, going into next year, I think that's going to be one of the big, storylines to look forward into the next season is, how can this team kind of really buy into each other and then kind of, uplift them going forward and, just like I said, just propel themselves to, just play better as a unit. Because, obviously when Cat and Ant, have bad games, they other guys like McDaniels, Nas Reed, Alexander Rock, those guys got to help carry the load. So I think, when just starting with those two, I think just a lack of, consistent production from the whole unit, I think goes a long way. So I think they really need to work on, just buying into each other a little bit more going into next year. I think that's really the main thing, what they need to focus on when they're regrouping in the offseason here.
I mean, Garrett, you could say that about any NBA team, all the points you just made, though, really. I mean, everyone's going to buy in a little bit more. Everyone's going to come together a little bit more. You got to focus on specifics more. Rudy Gobert in these playoffs. If you would say you were a basketball fan from a foreign nation and you knew nothing about the NBA, but you knew the sport, just let's play a little hypothetical there, and you came and you watched the Minnesota Timberwolves game, would you ever have thought that Rudy Gobert ever made an all NBA defensive team? Would anyone think that?
No. He was soft. He just wasn't in control to me. When I was watching the game, I mean, I said in the last episode, if the Timberwolves wanted to extend the series, he had to dominate the paint, and he just got bullied. Like, obviously, last game they had the lights were shot out on them instantly, so there was really no chance. But I mean, just watching that series after not being a fan of either team, there was just softness. For as much swagger as that team had, they were soft.
Yeah. I didn't think he was great in the pick and roll all playoffs, too.
No, he got abused. They targeted that. You can't be a depoy and get targeted in a pick and roll.
Thank you.
That's insane. That's insane.
Exactly.
When I think of a defensive player of the year, I think of a guy that really doesn't have any holes defensively. So maybe he wins that award because teams in the regular season don't focus on his weaknesses as much. It's a bizarre narrative how he's won all these defensive player of the years, and yet in the biggest series probably of his career, the biggest playoff run of his career, biggest series, however you want to phrase it, the boy got cooked. So I don't. I mean,
he did.
It's interesting. I'm not trying to rain on your parade, Garrett, but I'm looking at more specifics here. Anyone can say, "Oh, we need to buy in more. We need to come in together as a team more." Any offseason, really, every team that doesn't win the championship is going to say something like that. It's going to feel something like that. The media is going to say something like that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at more specifics here with Gobert, and like you said, their role players continuing to ascend. But all that being said, like I had said in my take, I don't think there's any way you can say that they couldn't win a championship in the next couple of years. They will have a dog in the race, in the fight.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the West is such a competitive conference. They kind of were really making a statement of what they did all year. But I think what it really comes down to, the phrase "defense championships," it comes down to defensive efficiency and physicality. And Minnesota really all series they were out physical in pretty much all aspects of the series.
Yeah, I think you guys were all on the same page. If anything, this was a promising year for the Timberwolves, and I kind of like where AJ took it with his analysis. Like, they're young. Like, Ant is 22 years old. Like, you guys are older than Anthony Edwards. Like, and he's my age. I'm 22. So he had some bad performances in the first couple of those Western Conference Finals games, as did Karl Anthony Towns, and Luke started to call out Cat, but it makes sense. But all in all, they made a trip to the Western Conference Finals. They beat the defending champion Nuggets, who a lot of people picked to come out of the West. So they had me fooled thinking they were going to win it all. But for me, as young as the team is, it's definitely more promising than as disappointing as it looked, even though they had a poor Western Conference Finals showing. Hey, they got there. I think this roster can do some damage in the future. No doubt about that. All right, switching over to a team that had been sitting pretty and made it out of their conference finals matchup, the Celtics, going on to the NBA Finals. But it does beg the question because they've been here before and they've had a lot of success without a ring. So let's talk about the duo of Tatum and Brown. And they've had 7 years playing together. Do you guys believe that this works, that they can win a championship? Luke, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've had a lot of kicks at the can as far as deep postseason runs are concerned. So I don't think anyone could sit here and say they can't win a title. even if they get swept in the finals this year, which isn't going to happen, but just hypothetically, I don't think they've had too many deep postseason runs to say they have no chance. However, we've talked about this before. The narrative every year they don't win one, the narrative about Tatum and Brown, just especially Tatum, keeps building and building. And that's maybe that's unfair, but that's how sports go. Whether that's sports media, that's sports culture nowadays, whether we like it or not. Every year you don't win a ring, it's you can't win one. How are they going to win one? Blah blah blah. I think this is definitely their easiest path they've had. I mean, I think their run through the East this year compared to their runs they've had to the East Finals or the Finals back in 2022 were a lot harder than this. I think this team is well rested. Hopefully they get Porzingis back. I don't know how many more excuses you can use if you're the Celtics. I definitely think, to answer your question, though, they can absolutely win a championship, and they really should win this series. We'll get to that, but they really should win this series.
Well, I just want to follow up on that right quick, Luke, because you said if they get swept, you still would say yes and maybe want to run it back next year. I kind of think that this is like championship or bust right now for the Celtics. Like they've been here, they've had so much playoff success, but like if you lose now, particularly if you get swept, like how do you not blow it up?
I mean,
I think you're facing one of the most talented backcourts the game has ever seen. So I don't think if you lose to Kyrie Irving, who as much as I hate, I have to respect, of just about what he's brought to the game. He's an NBA champion. He's one of the most skilled ball handlers any of us have ever seen. And Luka Doncic is on a path to be an all-time great at the age of 25, I believe. Yep. I don't see how you could lose to one of the most talented backcourts ever, like I said, and think that you have to blow it up. You get bested in this series, you get bested. I would 100% run this team back. And I think they have the ability to do that. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any Celtics. We're getting ahead of ourselves before the season even starts, but I don't think this series defines this group as far as bringing it back, but it's just going to define their accomplishments to date, if that makes sense.
Well, I don't know. Blowing it up to me doesn't make any sense. Not to get too sidetracked, but like, blow it up to what? Your best chance of winning is the guys you have on the team right now. Right. So if your goal is winning a chip, you got to keep them together. It doesn't matter if they keep losing. Obviously, in years past, they kept losing, so they made a bunch of changes. And now this is the team you're going to ride with. I mean, Porzingis signed an extension. Holiday signed an extension. I mean, Luke, to address that point, the only person not under either contract or a team option this year going into this offseason is O'Shea Brissett. Is he really going to make that much of an impact? Not really. So the Celtics in their head, they're like, all right, regardless of what happens this year, chip or not, we're coming back with the same team.
Yeah, Joey, just to answer that in a more simple way too, I just wouldn't blow up a team that won more than 60 games, made the East Finals, and has guys that have either won before or have the ability you think to have the makeup to win. I don't see how much better you could make this team going into the offseason. I mean, if there's a way to make it better if it doesn't work out in this series, I'm sure Stevens will figure it out. I think he's been a great GM so far for them. In the couple of years he's had that position. But I like this group. I think this group could win multiple rings. I really do.
Yeah, I think that's the point is, they're so stacked. I almost feel like when I say that, I'm trying to say there's really no excuses for the Celtics not to get it done this year after the 60 wins and that star-studded roster they put together.
See, I think that's where we disagree. I think as much as I don't like Kyrie, I think Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic is one of the best backcourts we've seen in the NBA in a long time. And I'm not trying to give my team, the Celtics, an excuse before this season's even started. But
yeah,
I'm not changing the future of a franchise and blowing up a roster if you lose to one of the most talented backcourts I've ever seen. I wouldn't do that personally. I don't think that one series could define whether this team is a good fit together. That's how I feel about it.
No, I agree. I think, I just really quickly, Garrett, I think if you get swept,
Okay.
You kind of take a step back and you're like, all right, what was the reason they got swept?
Yeah.
Did Kyrie and Luka shoot 80% from the field for 4 games, or did Tatum average 9 points? Like it all depends on, obviously, we're acting as if they're going to get swept. They're not going to get swept. They have a better chance of winning the series than losing the series, for being honest.
Okay.
But I think if they were to lose, you would have to look. You couldn't ignore the fact of why they lost. You would have to pinpoint what caused you to lose, and is that a problem that's easily fixable, or is it just bad shooting?
I think if you want to tell me that if they lose this series in 4 or 5 games, then something's got to give, I could work with you on that. But I think if they lose a hard fought series, 6, 7 games, I wouldn't change that much.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you guys really said it. I mean, when you really just look at the Celtics team, compared to years past, Stevens, like you said, Luke, done a really good job with this team, making the necessary, additions to kind of complete the team. Joe, you said that they're one of the most stacked teams, probably the most stacked team in the league in terms of just balanced rosters as a whole. So I think, with the additions of Holiday and Porzingis, they do, without a doubt they are. So, I think just when you look at Tatum and Brown and then all the compliments, that they have next to them, I think really, like you said, Joe, I couldn't have said it better myself. It really is championship or bust at this point. You have all the pieces in place.
Yeah. So this is a question. What is bust? When you say bust, does that mean that we'll just be really disappointed? Or does that mean the front office will have to make a change? That's a question.
No.
When you say bust, does that mean, because I'm in agreement, I'm going to be very disappointed if they don't win a championship.
No.
You want to talk bust in that sense, I'm with you. I'm just not blowing it up regardless of what happens.
No, yeah, I wasn't talking about blowing. I wasn't saying blowing it up. I'm just saying running it back next year, but I'm saying in terms of expectations this year and where this team is at.
All right.
They have to win a championship with the current roster and the pieces that they all have. And I think just when you talk about just putting it all together, it comes with everyone. They've kind of bought it. They've really bought into each other this year, and with everything that Missoula's been saying, I thought Missoula's done a great job of just kind of having them buy into the moment, each other, developing chemistry with Holiday and Porzingis, and I think that's really what it comes down to, is just having everyone together and buying into the moment. But I think when it comes,
Missoula's a great coach. Missoula's a great coach, Garrett. But I think it's the ultimate players' league out of the 4 main sports.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a little bit different like this, maybe than some other NBA fans, and I don't know how you guys feel with this. When I go into this series, I'm not thinking about Joe Mazzulla and Jason Kidd. I just don't. In high level NBA. In the playoffs, just really in the NBA in general, I think the coaching impact is a lot smaller, especially in the playoffs. To me, the playoffs are about matchups. And maybe you could say good coaches can exploit those matchups more and utilize those matchups properly. But I'm not thinking a lot about Joe Mazzulla going into this series.
His responsibility, in my opinion, is to call a timeout when you need to call a timeout. And let the boys shoot.
And let them run, yeah.
Yeah, that's how they played the whole season. Shoot 48, 49 threes a game.
Especially AJ too. If you have Porzingis back, I think your rotations are more cut and dry. I think when you're throwing guys in there to help fill that void, like a Luke Cornett, I think if Porzingis is back, I think your rotations are more just obvious, I guess you could say. But what my thing with that is, and this is one thing we could talk about going into the series, is how do you manage that whole situation? How full steam ahead do you put Porzingis in? That's another thing I don't know.
It's all up to his health. All the reports are good news. He's on track to play game 1. Is he going to play 38 minutes? Probably not. But I think the Celtics, I could see a way they win the series without him. Not that that's the question we're answering, but I think you need him. You need him in his full capacity. So if he's not 100%, I don't even want him on the court, to be perfectly honest.
Wow. Yeah, I think you definitely need him. But Garrett, I like what you said, man. I think the loaded roster, it's championship or bust, dude. That's what I'm saying. But
Yeah,
with that,
literally, it's at that point they're just too stacked to not win it this year, especially with the road that they've had.
But they were the favorites, though. Like the championship or
Yeah.
bust mentality. Like that's the expectation. So like,
I don't love that word.
I guess if you're I'm with Luke in the sense that like bust means like you have to rearrange a lot of things if you lose. And like I don't think it's like mentality wise, if you don't win a championship, then you failed. Like it's championship or failure. It's not championship or bust.
I just don't love that narrative. It's hard to win a championship in sports. I don't love that narrative. Never have in any sport. It's hard to win a championship. This is not the dream team they're rolling out their NBA version. It's not the 86 team of the Celtics had or anything like that. I don't love that narrative. You're facing two world-class guards. You could easily lose, and I'm not going to blow it up or feel like super, super disappointed like I want to break a TV. It's competition. It's all about
I will.
matchups. We'll see what happens. I just don't look at sports necessarily in that way, unless you're so good. But I don't think the Celtics are quite that. We'll see.
I think we could probably talk about that for hours if we wanted. But
yeah, for real.
Yes.
Yeah. But let's move on to our actual predictions of the series. We've kind of started to foreshadow it now. Garrett, who's winning how many games?
Okay, thank you, Joe. Yeah, I've been thinking about this a while, but I'm locking in. I think I'm going to go Celtics in 6 games. I think just when you look at this team, you like said, just best Luke said, best backcourt duo that we've seen in years, and I think when you just compare that, you can't deny the fact that they can a couple games in Dallas or pull. Celtics have a bad game too, like they've had a history of in those first couple series. But I think, when it comes down to it, best backcourt duo having games where they both put up at least 25 points. I mean, there's just no doubt in my mind that the Dallas can steal 2 games of this series. Even if the Celtics do play, their best ball, it still comes down to who can hit more shots, in the first 48 minutes. So, I mean, I think there's no doubt in my mind that this game could go 6. I could see 5 too, but I think just with the way this Dallas team is, I'm going with 6 games because just how impactful Kyrie and Luka are to that team, and what they can do, how skilled they are, and kind of just how they complement each other and how they can kind of just facilitate and get everybody else involved too, and just open a lot of other things up. I can really see Dallas getting a couple games in this series, but I'm going to lock in season 6.
I got season 6 too. I think it's a trendy pick. For the only thing, what worries me in this series with the Celtics, or one of the things that worries me in the Celtics, is if Porzingis comes right in, okay, how many minutes do you play him? I'm not trotting out Porzingis to his normal minutes like he was before, no matter how healthy he is. Okay, whether you want to give him a clean book of health or say 75%, 100%, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, he hasn't played in the playoffs this year. Okay, you cannot simulate playing a playoff game at the Celtics practice facility. Okay, I would ease him into it in games 1 and game 2 so your team doesn't suffer. I would keep a modified rotation where you're still playing a guy like Cornette. Maybe Horford plays more, blah, blah, blah. That's one of my concerns in the series. My second concern, let's stay focused off the Kyrie narrative. I'm not saying the players can get distracted. The players can. I'm not saying the players are going to get too distracted by that, but we are all human. Okay? The media, the players hear what the media says. They hear what the fans say. Let's not overdo the Kyrie stuff. Okay? He's been gone for a couple years. It doesn't matter. He's trying to win a championship. You're trying to win a championship. Let's focus on basketball. Okay? Let's not try to stick it to someone too much. Those are two things right off the bat. I got Celtics in 6, but like I said to you before, you're facing a great backcourt. The Mavericks definitely could win this series.
All right. Well, I guess might as well make it 3 in a row. I also have Celtics in 6, but I could easily see this going 7 games. Like, I think I've seen a lot of Celtics fans on social media saying, "Oh, season 5, whatever." Like, I don't think people really understand how good Luka is. Like, Luka could literally win you a game single-handedly. Single-handedly. Like, he could just walk in, drop 50-point triple-double, and leave TD Garden with a win. And we all know that there's going to be one game where Derek Jones Jr. drops like 26. Derek Lively drops 20 and 15. It's the role players game. Every Celtics series has the role player game, where regardless if they win or not, they're going to have a monster game. So they just got to be prepared for it. So I think that could win you a game. Luka could win you a game. And then just by the backcourt duo, they could win you another game. So I could see it going 7. I think the Celtics, I think it'll be 1-1 going to Dallas. And then I think the Celtics are just going to really grind down and continue to not lose on the road.
Well, we got a common pick here. I'm going to go ahead and take the Celtics in 7 games. I'm probably not as confident in the C's as you guys are. I think the Mavericks team is really dangerous, but with Porzingis and a fully healthy Celtics roster, I think they'll get it done this year. Finally for Tatum and Brown. And I got him doing it in 7 games. So, Luke, you started to bring up this narrative of Kyrie Irving facing his former team in Boston. Let's talk, how significant do you think this storyline is going into the NBA Finals?
It's really significant. My concern with it, Joey, is no matter what Joe Mazzulla wants to say and how they're focused and how everyone, I don't know if you guys caught it, he said everyone's a villain to someone. Everyone's human. Everyone hears what people say. Everyone has attitudes going in. I think it's a huge story. If he beats you, if Kyrie beats the Celtics, it's the ultimate, hey, I got you guys back for how you unfairly treated me when I was in Boston. I've never wanted to use air quotes more than that. Or it's the Celtics fans and getting their revenge for a guy who skipped out on them. That would be the correct and factual narrative to that. It's the ultimate revenge for them. It's a huge storyline. It's one of the biggest I could ever remember in the league. You have a guy that stomped on the leprechaun. I mean, that in itself. You're someone that despises your city and your fan base that tried to give him everything and tried to give him all this support, and it wasn't good enough for little Kyrie. I think it's a huge narrative. Based off of it's a huge narrative, a large part, just because of his actions since he left.
Yeah, I think stomping on the logo for me, that really said it. If he didn't do that, I'd be like, all right, it's been like 4 years. Let's get over it. He only spent 2-3 years with the team. Just a diva. Let's all move on. But the fact that you stomp on the logo and then proceed to lose the next 10 games to the team that you did that to, the players know that. Don't think that they don't know that. They can go out there and play the game. Oh, we'll take every game at a time. They know, they remember he stepped on the logo. They know that Kyrie's 0-10 his last 10 games against the Celtics, and they remember that, and they're going to use that against him. Now, obviously, he's a phenomenal player, and he's going to come out and get his. But, I mean, I think it's a bigger storyline for the media. That just gives them so much to talk about. And I think the players do remember it, and they will think of it, but they're not going to, they're not going to let that come out in their play. They're not going to start being overly aggressive and taking cheap fouls on it because of that.
No, definitely not. But I think one thing, AJ, too, that's interesting is Kyrie with his actions these last couple of years since he left, what he's done now is created a more hostile environment for his entire team. Now, is a road NBA Finals game going to be a hostile environment no matter what, especially in a city with a strong sports culture like Boston? Yeah, obviously. You're going to get booed whether they were playing insert any Western Conference NBA team. But he's made this a more hostile and tougher place for them to play now. And as a
Oh,
Celtics fan, that's awesome. So
you'll hear the F Kyrie chants for sure.
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
if Luka, even if there wasn't that, Luka would add to that. He would antagonize the crowd just the same. So I can't wait. I can't wait for the crowd at the Garden. These games, it's going to be electric.
Oh,
this series
it really is.
This series is cinema. Cinema.
Yeah, it is for any Celtics fan, really any NBA fan. But yeah, I mean, you guys really said it best. It's definitely is, definitely a main storyline, huge storyline going into the series. Ultimate disrespect that Kyrie did with stomping on the logo.
Yes,
I mean, I think that's got to be fuel to that's got to be fuel to the fire for C's fans, for Celtics players. But I mean, I think once this series goes on into a couple games, I could really see it. Obviously, also depending on how the first two games play out, I think I could see the narrative also kind of simmering out a little bit. Obviously, depending on if the C's take the first couple games, that narrative is definitely not going to be talked about nearly as much. And I think they're going to pivot and transition, into something else. But I think definitely for right now, it's definitely a prevalent storyline. But I think after game 2 going into maybe game 3, depending on how those first two games play out, I mean, I definitely can just see it not being as prevalent as it is right now.
I don't want to nitpick what you're saying too much, Garrett. I don't think him stomping on the Leprechaun is storyline number 1 in the Kyrie saga. I might have exaggerated that in my take earlier, but I think it's just like him getting up on the microphone in front of all those fans and saying how we wanted to resign and how we wanted to be there. And people in Boston, on a serious note, they take that to heart. Yeah. When you're a legend and you're a prominent figure in the sports community there, you're a legend. Yeah. Legend. Like it's not like other places.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're go in front of a packed TD Garden and say you want to re-sign with the Celtics and say you want to be there. Celtics fans, we've been talking about Banner 18 for a while, ever since. I remember my friends talk about it when we were in high school, and now we're 20. I'm 20, just turned 24. I think people envisioned the next championship team and the next team to get Banner 18 as Kyrie being a cornerstone of that team. And now when you have him being the thing that's stopping you from getting that, that's just inherently and naturally going to be a huge narrative.
Yeah, I think you guys.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Hit the nail on the head. Did you have one more thing, AJ?
No, I was just going to say, personally, for me, I think stopping is the worst. I didn't like, he wasn't asked like, oh, you gonna resign, whatever. Like, he got up there and said it on his own will. But I mean, actions speak louder than words. And I think in terms of what is going to propel the Celtics to get over that hump and like to use the Kyrie storyline to their favor is just the vision of him stomping on the logo in their head.
Yeah, I think
like to me that's the bigger part right there.
I think the antics are huge. That's why I have it as such a huge storyline going in. Like, think about all those moments of Kyrie facing the Celtics since he left. You guys, I know we've hammered on stomping on the logo, but there's been audible boos and chants at Kyrie. There's been a fan threw a water bottle at him. There's Kyrie Irving flipping off the Boston fans with his hands behind his back. There's a lot that goes into this, the significance of this Celtics storyline. Kyrie got fined for the flipping the bird, obviously, but there's so much that has happened since he left. And TD Garden's going to erupt when Kyrie touches the ball first in game 1. Like, I think it's going to – the game's in Boston. This storyline is going to be huge. And I agree to the point that it's not as much for the players as we get into, game 2, game 3, whatever. But the fans and the atmosphere, the media, guys like us, the fans that are going to be at the games, like, it's not – you're not going to be able to ignore it when TD Garden is erupting boos, when Kyrie Irving dribbles the basketball, like probably every single time he takes a dribble.
Yeah.
Kyrie has definitely fueled the fire even more for the massholes and the townies of Massachusetts, for sure.
Yeah,
he's definitely done
for
that.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. And so this series, I know you guys have them in 6, but no one's counting out either team. both have been really good in the playoffs when it's crunch time. What team do you guys trust most when the games get close, when we get down the stretch? Garrett, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, when you look at both teams and just, how well they've been in crunch time situations. I mean, I think it's hard to pick one, but I think, if what I really think when it comes down to, crunch time, 2 minutes, who's going to make, a huge play, game-changing play down the stretch when it really matters most. I think I'm going to take the Celtics, despite how clutch Luka has been, just as a player throughout his career in general. I just think when it comes to matchups, in this particular series, I think the Celtics, especially on the defensive end, when you really need, I look at that Game 4 series, that Game 4 Pacers game, with Drew Holiday, making that game clinching steal completely clean to an icing game. When you have, situations like that where you really need a big time, defensive stop or, big shot. I mean, I think I'm definitely going to go with the Celtics. I think they're just a better, more complete defensive team overall. And I think from an offensive perspective too, I mean, I think, the Celtics have just so many more ways to, exploit mismatches outside of Kyrie and Luka, especially in the front court. So, I mean, I think when it really comes down to it, I'm going to take the Celtics in that take.
I'll keep my take simple on this. I actually, in a close game, would trust the Mavericks a little bit more. One narrative I hate from the Celtics run to the Eastern Conference Final, we debated this last show kind of in circles a little bit, but I don't think the Celtics having close games against depleted rosters to their run to the East Finals and coming on top in those games, it doesn't make me feel better about them in crunch time. I'm sorry. It doesn't. I actually, in a close game situation, I would have a little bit more confidence in Kyrie and Luka than Brown and Tatum. I would.
I would have more confidence in Kyrie and Luka than Brown and Tatum, but not the entire Mavericks team. I would trust guys 3 through 5 on the Celtics to play better than guys 3 through 5 on the Mavericks. And you can obviously weigh that as if like Luka, is going to take the last shot if you're the Mavericks. Like he just is. But I trust a guy like Derek White over a guy like PJ Washington. Or I trust Drew Holiday more than I trust Derek Jones Jr. So if you throw a blitz at a Luka or Kyrie and they have to get rid of the ball, I'm living with that. Compared to if the Mavericks throw a blitz at Jaylen Brown or Tatum and then you have to give the ball to, oh no, Derek White has the ball in the corner 3. Look what he just did to the Pacers. I know to your point, it's not great that they were tested by an injury-riddled team, but they can hit those shots. I'm not confident that PJ Washington is going to nail some like contested 3 over Drew Holiday. Like I'll take the Celtics as a full team play down the stretch, but like if you're taking a single guy for the last shot in a tie game, give me Luka.
I'm with Luke on this one, honestly. I'd take in the Mavericks when the games get close. AJ, I might have to flash back to you saying in one of our earlier episodes that you don't want to face the Mavericks when the games get close down the stretch. That was your original take.
I did say that, but they also haven't played the Celtics.
True, but you could argue that they've had better competition. They've definitely played better teams than the Celtics have played on their way to the finals.
Here's the thing.
That was actually...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can go. Well, I was going to bring up the point that this series is the best team that each team has played. So we don't know how they're going to play against each other. Game 1 is going to be like chaos, in my opinion. I think it's going to be not at all what the rest of the series is going to be like. So once we see what the series is actually going to be like, we can get a better determination of who's going to play what down the stretch and matchups like that. But I mean, I don't know. I trust the Celtics 5 guys in the court more than I trust the Mavericks 5 guys as a team unit.
Fair enough. Lots to say before we can get on to the final topic. I just don't think the narrative. I think the narrative wouldn't be that the Celtics can now close these late games in the playoffs if they didn't have closer games against lesser rosters on their path to the final. So I don't think I think people are letting that affect their take on this because they couldn't blow out the teams they played that they should have when their rosters weren't as good. That's what I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
think
I
when push-
disagree, but I won't say anything about that. We went in that pretty heavily last episode, so
Yeah, talk in circles.
Yeah, guys, go watch episode 3 if you want some fiery debate on the Celtics' path to the finals. But I think when push comes to shove, it is the Mavericks that I would trust going down the stretch. So I wonder then a follow up to that. Out of every player in the series, who do you guys want taking the last shot? AJ, we can start with you now.
I mean, I kind of already said it. Luka. There's not a person on the court I would trust more than Luka. I mean, as a Celtics fan, it's killed me to watch him hit many buzzer beaters, many heavily contested fadeaway 3 buzzer beaters against my team in recent years. And there's not a lot of people where I'm sitting there watching a game and I'm like actively crapping my pants, being like, wow, this guy's actually going to end the game or end the series for my favorite team. And he's a guy that could do it every single time.
Yeah, I mean, really, I, despite the Celtics, I said as a complete team, I think when it comes down to one specific player and you need a quick shot, I mean, AJ, you said it. I got to go with Luka Doncic. I mean, you said it. I mean, in the head-to-head matchups, we've lost like at least 2 buzzer beaters that he's hit on us. I mean, I just think when it comes down to a clutch shot with 5 seconds left, I mean, he's the guy that you want the ball in your hands. He's just so he's shown it time and time again where he can really hit clutch shots when it matters most, and he's probably the best in the league, probably easily the clutchest player in the league. So I mean, I think when you come down to a crunch time player like him, I mean, I have to go Luka Doncic.
I don't know if he's the clutchest player in the league yet, but that's another conversation for another day. Yeah, I'm taking. I mean, if I could pick from these rosters for a clutch shot in any game, my top 2 picks are wearing the Mavericks colors. I would take Kyrie or Luka over a clutch shot versus Brown or Tatum or Holiday or anyone. I would. Luka's just. I mean, Luka's got balls of steel. He really does.
And I'm glad you brought up Kyrie too, Luke, because I think he's a lot of times, he's got the reputation for being the clutch player. But I would also pick Luka Doncic to take my last shot out of anyone in this series. I mean, it's incredible what we've seen. And we saw it, the shot over Gobert. We saw countless. There's a shot against the Trailblazers where there's 0.6 on the clock, and Luka hit a game-tying 3 in the corner.
Yeah, that was cold.
Wasn't it his rookie year?
I can't remember what year, but like
that was. I remember that shot was early on in his career.
You know what I'm talking about, though? It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
first or second year, yeah.
100%, I'm going Luka Doncic as well. All right, guys. We like to do something fun, something hypothetical, perhaps, to end each episode. This time, since I've got the 3 Celtics fans on board with me, let's talk about some teams in Celtics history. 2008 Celtics championship team versus a team you guys think will win the championship this year. They might not, but they're a good team. The 2024 Celtics. In a best-of-7 series, who would win? Luke, kick us off.
I thought about this one. I would give the edge to the 08 Celtics in this conversation. I think Rondo was just a great playmaker, and I think he really kind of glued that team together. I think KG has reached a level. I think KG reached a level of greatness as a player that no one on the Celtics team has done yet. I think KG's toughness would throw this Celtics team for a loop a little bit. As far as depth goes, in maybe that second line, I think maybe the 2024 Celtics could make up for that a little bit. I think their second unit might be better. We could debate that, I guess. I think it would be a close. I think it would be a close series. I would go 2008 Celtics in 6 to stick with the in 6 theme.
I agree. I wanted to pick the 2024 Celtics, but I mean, I just feel like that 08 team had like a little bit of everything in every area. You had one of the greatest shooters of all time, who you really couldn't defend. He was just either he made the shot or he missed it. You weren't defending him. Like Luke said, Rondo is a great glue guy. I think he's probably one of the most overlooked outside of Boston, one of the most overlooked champions. Like, as well as like what a team just needed. He obviously only won 2 rings, but he was crucial to that Celtics team. Like, even all the players say it, he's the one that facilitated the games and basically won the games. I think Brown would win the matchup against Paul Pierce purely based on like physicality. But I still would have to go the 08 Celtics. I mean, their defensive intensity was just crazy, and they had Tony Allen coming off the bench too. I'd probably go them, and like I could see it going 7.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it best. I mean, I think it would be definitely at least a 6 or 7 game series either way. But yeah, I'm gonna agree with you guys, and I gotta go the 08 team in 7 games, just because I think, you know, like you guys said, defensive intensity was just so prominent. You know, Ray Allen, you know, one of the best shooters of all time, and you know, a clutch guy like Paul Pierce hitting clutch shots after clutch shots. KG down low, his physical prowess, rim protection ability, I think would give, you know, definitely the 2024 team a good run. But I think when it comes down to those specific pieces, in comparison to the team now, I'm going to give the Celtics. I will give them. The 2024 team definitely does have a little bit of a better depth piece. I'd say they're definitely a little bit deeper, but I think just as a team as a whole, and just what the identity of that 08 team was, I'm going to go the 08 team a little bit edge. Give them I'd have them winning by like 5 points or less in a 7 game series.
When you guys talk about depth, do you mean like the entire roster, or are you just talking about like strictly bench?
I don't know. I think
because I would take the 08 bench over this year's bench easily. I think like toe to toe roster wise, you could say the 24 team is better from top to bottom, but I don't know. I think that the depth, the bench depth on the 08 team is better than Sam Hauser and Luke Cornett. Like, let's be honest.
You can't argue that.
Pritchard. Yeah. Like, Pritchard's a good player, don't get me wrong, but like you got Tony Allen coming off the bench, Glenn Davis, Powell, the White Mamba,
House, the
White Mamba.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's interesting. I think we all agree on what's the most important thing. I think the 08 team was better.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm definitely gonna go with the 08 Celtics as well. Honestly, I was thinking of taking them in 5 or 6 games. I'll say 6, but that roster was pretty stacked. I mean, KG, the truth, Paul Pierce, he was the Finals MVP in 08. Like, and he said, to our point about closing games and clutch players, Pierce and Ray Allen. I mean, those are some clutch guys. Gary, you talked about all the clutch shots that Pierce has hit in his career. I mean, I think they'd had everything you need to beat today's Celtics. So I'm also going 08 Celts. We'll see if 24 Celtics can add a banner in that arena. Boys, any final thoughts, final takes before we wrap up here today?
No.
Go C's.
Green runs deep.
Yeah, turning off the analyst side of things, it'd be nice to have another parade rolling through Boston. It's been it's been like 6 years. For a city like that, it's a long time. So 6 years for any Boston team, long enough for the Celtics, obviously.
Yeah, that's since 08. So, boys, this was a good one. Fun times, good debate. Tune in Wednesday for our next edition of the 2 Cent Sports Podcast right before game 1 of the NBA Finals. We'll have some more good analysis, good hypotheticals, and great takes from all of us around. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you next time.